matters.
Working on scaling mission matters. There's a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, executives out there that are working on scaling their businesses as well. So we're going to be picking your brain today. But before we get into that, we'll start this episode the way that we start them all, with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Keith, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Keith, what mission matters to you?
I'm a big believer in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think across all the businesses that I've been involved now almost 30 years,
Hmm.
I'm a hard driver on treating everybody fairly, building cultures of equity and inclusion with great diversity. Even at Pythian today, 40% of our senior leadership team is female.
Hmm.
And frankly, the
Day entrepreneur, executive business mindset. Like, where'd that start for you?
I've been really lucky in my career, Adam, but it started for me with my parents. Frankly, they
Mm.
had a high focus on education and building of skills, and they were both entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So I saw it early on as I was growing up. And my first business actually was in high school.
Mm.
I started mowing lawns with a close buddy. We were great teammates. And when I went off to college, he actually stayed, and that business is a
Mm.
multi-million dollar business today that he still runs from what we started 30, 40 years ago. And I was
Oh,
really
man.
lucky in my first job out of college to get engaged in the largest, most valuable company in the world, Fortune 1, in their management development program. I was fortunate to go through that program and have great mentors, learning from experienced managers. I was trained to build winning teams
Mm.
quickly to achieve goals, to over the course of a 18-month process,
Mhm.
set a mission, achieve that mission, get promoted ideally, and do it again. I
Yeah.
remember one very early assignment, Adam. I was the youngest of 45 people running a warehouse in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So
Yeah.
I literally was the superintendent of this warehouse. I had 44 people underneath me. I was the youngest of all 45. And
Mm.
so, put into that position early on in my career, I had to learn how to work with others
Mhm.
when telling them what to do would never work. So,
Mm.
I learned to team with senior leaders to craft winning agendas. It was a great lesson in my early 20s on getting started in business. And those lessons I've learned from my parents, from that high school business and that
Mhm.
management development program, I've used throughout my life.
Mm. I want to stick just a little. We'll speed it up, but I want to stick on those early days just a little bit longer, because I'm always curious when there's because growing up, my father was an entrepreneur. My mother was a social worker, so not she two different routes. But whenever I hear of an entrepreneur that comes on the show that has both that are entrepreneurs or involved in the family business, like, or family businesses, it always interests me, like, what were holidays like around an entrepreneurial table? Like, were you getting lessons there, or just in general, like, what were the holidays like around for an entrepreneurial family?
Well, interesting. They were in similar businesses. My father actually was a
Mm.
lawyer, and he went in through a legal route and started his own firm and had to grow
Mm.
that over time. And my mother was in a legal related business that she started.
Ah.
And so the dynamic at the dinner table with me and my three siblings was certainly there was discussion about what was happening
Mhm.
in the universe and global events. But when we talked about business and one would come home happy from the day and one would come home
Yeah.
unhappy, it made for lively discussions.
I thought so. Were there like lessons like being taught there either directly or indirectly just through listening? Like were you kind of a sponge at those age at that age, or were you thinking like, "Oh, we got to listen to this again?" If you remember, I don't know. I just
Well, my father actually started his education in engineering and
Hmm.
then moved into law. And I followed in the engineering path and stayed in engineering and
Hmm.
business and didn't go into law. But as I kind of was more bent towards, so we're entrepreneurs. And I think that leadership from my parents really took hold.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember thinking, like, when I hear my dad talk about it or something, I'd be like, "I don't wanna be an entrepreneur, I don't," and I didn't ever wanna be. I have another thing that I wrote where I always refer to myself as an accidental entrepreneur. I didn't really know that that's what I was doing at the time. But anyway, I digress. But I had to get those childhood stories because I think that, and this is how, in my opinion, it kind of relates. Is then so if we fast forward a bit, then you get to Fortune One management training, and now you're really in the big leagues. I mean, you're learning from the best of the best in terms of business. And to me, what I see, at least in your path from what I know so far, is that there was certain structures and there was just certain things to where you don't have to have it all figured out. Like I feel like right now with like the idea of being an apprentice or the idea of like growing your skills over time, like with media and all these other things that are in the news, like you hear about the Facebook or the billionaire this or the person this or the Elon Musk. And I try to, tell other entrepreneurs that are on the journey, like it's a process. Like you're just seeing where they're at this moment, but there's a whole lot more in terms of backstory. And that's what we try to bring out as well in the show. So people know, hey, if you're going through it, like there's others that are as well.
It was training that I think really helped me from the start. And
Mm.
when I mentor young people or mentor CEOs today as a board director,
Mhm.
I go back to those discussions. And I remember my father saying, someday you will lead a company or
Yeah.
lead some team to win. And his preaching really was about we're all the CEOs of our
Mm.
own destiny,
Yeah.
right? And charting that destiny and having a mission, as we know, mission matters,
Mm.
is really important. And I've taken that in terms of building great teams and building great
Mm.
companies throughout my career. So starting with that childhood, mentoring that I got from my parents, all the way through my
Mm.
initial career training, and now at over a dozen firms to help them grow and achieve.
Yeah.
It's been a great career.
Yeah. And so kind of taking it, present day, and obviously in my this happens every generation, every cycle, every college class, like there's always quote unquote turmoil or things happening in the world always. And that's a given. But let's just speaking present day and from your vantage point for that, let's just say that next crop of entrepreneurs and executives that are coming out into the workforce, a lot of change in the way that work is being done, right? Whether it's remotely, whether it's going to the office. I mean, post pandemic, like all these things that are happening, and just a
Careers and how that has evolved. And the gentleman from the 60s had worked for one company for 50 years and got his
wow.
golden, ended up as CEO of Duke Power or something and got his golden watch when he left. The guy in the 70s had worked for two companies. I represented the 80s graduate, and I
Mm,
had worked for 6 or 8 or 10 by that time. And fast forward to an individual that was getting his master's or PhD
mm.
at Duke at the time. He had already started 3 companies. And
Wow.
so you see this natural evolution. And if you fast forward to where we are today, I think, the principles of you're the CEO of your own destiny still applies,
Mm-hmm.
but what it takes to win now has evolved. And so the principles of leadership, especially around emotional intelligence, have changed. It used to be that everyone would go into the office, you had formal training programs. That really doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And given the remote work from home elements of today's environment and the social media, you know, coverage that envelopes our young people, building emotional
Mhm.
skills and empathy is
Yeah.
is perhaps the missing ingredient. And
Mm,
so we emphasize that listening, collaboration, communications, empathy, those are key assets and requirements of leading
mm.
that really have been shortchanged over the last 5 years because of the great resignation and the pandemic and remote work from home and a number of
Mm.
macroeconomic issues.
Yeah. And so one of the things that you're known for is scaling quite a few companies. So I believe 12 companies. At what point did you now I've interviewed just so you know, Keith, over 5,000 people, like a couple thousand CEOs. And that's a lot of companies. Do you feel like this is your gift, or when did you know like this was going to be your thing? Cuz and I'm saying it's your thing. You didn't say that, but when did you know this was going to be your thing, like scaling
Well,
companies?
it is my thing. I
Mm,
think I was lucky to get a great education,
mm,
master's in engineering, master's in business, in my undergraduate work. I was able to build up some skills early on in my career through that management development program.
mm,
And then my next opportunity really was in consulting. And I
mm,
helped grow a company from 30 million to 200 million. And we went public and became
mm,
quite successful. Ended up getting bought by a Fortune 500 company in the 90s. And from that experience, I saw what worked and the
mm.
value creation that you can have in that kind of $20 million range to 200 or 50
Yeah.
to 500. It's a 10x revenue. And
Mhm.
and oftentimes that's in terms of a culture, that's in terms of a people first approach and a customer first
Mhm.
approach. There's a number of things that you have to build really as a foundation.
Yeah.
And then on top of that foundation, there are some challenges that change quite a bit as you grow. And there's
Mm,
some challenges that are the same at any size.
mm,
So my view is that the culture that you build,
yeah.
you continue to stress that throughout the size, no matter what size the company is. The
Mm,
principles, the mission, the vision, the focus on customers, employees, all that stays the same. And I can think back to that consulting firm I mentioned.
mhm,
Our principle, a culture of innovation and
mhm,
customer service, and actually regional P&L that was highly
mm,
motivational to those profit and loss
yeah.
leaders. What lasted from start to finish of that
Mm,
company. There are challenges that change. There's structural challenges. There's processes. The processes you have when you have a team of one or 10 or 100, they have to change.
Yeah.
And the global footprint that you grow from 20 to 200 million, most of those companies, you might start with a national focus and then you add a second country, you go international. So you end up with subsidiaries and international growth and vertical industry focus, and all those things have to change. But as I look at, the repeatable patterns of
Hmm.
that growth, there's a number of things that have to stay the same: principles,
Mhm.
mission, vision, culture. And
Yeah.
then the kind of the industrialization of the company from 20 to 200 has to
Mhm.
occur. And those are in processes and technology and those types of things. So building a great foundation and then keeping certain pieces the same and then evolving the others as you grow is a key to success.
So one of the things you mentioned as a specific example just now was, the regional P&Ls or different and how that permeated. Are there any other throughout the organization? Are there any other things that just kind of stick out in your memory when it comes to like scaling culture? And if you would use the term scaling culture, I don't know if that's the right way to position, or if the culture just, we would hope ideally it permeates everything that we do in an organization, like in a perfect world, but like anything that you recall, or like, and just in general, or any tips on really how to scale culture?
As I mentioned, there's certain things I think that stay the same as you grow a
Mm,
company, and the focus on taking care of your people,
mm,
on DEI, on the mission of the firm and the vision. Those I think stay the same, and so those cultural items
mm.
are really important. For example, at Pythian, our vision is to unlock the power of data. We're a
Yeah.
data and analytics firm, and I think that isn't going to change. That's our
Hmm.
DNA. We've been in business for 26 years. That's what we do.
Yeah.
But we've had to change as we've tripled the size of the company
Hmm.
and grown from, several hundred people to many hundreds worldwide. And but the culture of collaboration and
Hmm.
communications and accountability and trust and transparency, those have stayed the
Hmm.
same. So there's pieces of culture, as you said, that are really critical, and communicating that, especially in today's environment where people are working from home, is super
Hmm.
important. As an example, Adam, I do not only do I do monthly all hands across the globe.
Consider like having those type of meetings, and that's just a little tip from me because it still reminds at a time here. We're not going to spend too much time on it. We're going to keep it out, and you can pick up
with a good well. And that's
Mhm. The winning team that you're building right now, and also your team in general. I mean, tell us a little bit more about the company.
well, Pythian is one of the premier data and analytics global
Mhm.
companies in the world. We focus on major corporations' data
Mhm.
estate, governance, strategy, security, the data architecture and model of those firms, then optimizing that data estate wherever it sits on premise or in the cloud.
Mhm.
And then the digital transformation and value you can drive out of that, including generative AI and all the analytics and advanced insights you can get from that data. So we
Mhm.
work with major corporations around the world to not only stabilize their data and optimize it and manage it, but to create value. So whether it's a recommendation engine or chat bots that are accurate or maximizing the uptime for a fleet, all the
Mhm.
things that you can do around data to drive revenue, reduce costs. Work with venture and private equity firms on boards. And just as an example, I'm on the board of a great company called ECI. And the company has doubled in size to
Mhm.
several $100 million over the last 3 or 4 years, really increased in value, expanded its product portfolio and services portfolio, and built a really good team. So,
Mhm.
it goes back to the what we talked about earlier of building a great team makes for a great company, of course, with the right principles and culture. And as Castle, ECI is doing that.
Ah, that's awesome. So, Keith, I mean, I know you're a busy guy. Of course, your responsibilities and your awesome team at Pythian. I mean, you're helping other companies as well to benefit from your scars, as you said it. Just have to ask. I mean, what's next? What's next for you? What's next for your career?
You know, I just get such joy,
Mhm.
honestly, about watching and building great teams that I'm not going to stop doing that. A lot of energy to help build winning teams, creating growing companies, And in the end, it creates, value for the shareholder, for the customers, for the employees. So I'm going to continue to do that. It's my passion. So whether there's 12 more, I'm sure there's bound to be more as technology evolves to stay at kind of the leading edge of software and services companies. It's really a fun spot to be. I love working with, aggressive my
difference in the world. If that's the type of content that sounds interesting or fun or exciting to you, we welcome you. Hit that subscribe button because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Keith, again, it